Hello, good morning, good evening, and good afternoon, and wherever you are in this wide, wonderful, beautiful world, you are welcome to the Global Sales Leader Podcast. I'm your host, Jason Cooper, and this podcast is dedicated to sharing golden nuggets of knowledge, inspiration, valuable insights from experts around the globe who are into sales, leadership, coaching, psychology, success, behavior analysts, body language, coaching, and so much more. So whether you're a seasoned sales professional or you're just starting on your journey, our aim is to help you learn, help you grow, and excel in what you do by helping giving value to other people in the world. So that's my start and that's my opener. And I have a wonderful guest on my right hand side, and he also got the message to wear blue shirt as well, same as me. So
we planned it, Jason.
we
We're
planned
twinning.
it. I was looking at you when we had our chat. I was going, you're wearing the same shirt as me, almost similar. So a little bit about Keith. Keith is a CEO of Profit Builder, name of one of the best sales training and coaching companies in the world for the last 4 consecutive years. So well done for that. You started out in 1989. Keith was delivered his programs to hundreds of thousands of people globally across 6 continents, 75 countries. His award-winning programs not only proven methodologies, but tactical frameworks in order to create the desired long-term cultural shift. And I always like to say it's a mind shift as well. And it's also about their self-accountability to want to learn, to want to grow, and to impact people. And you've also written several books. One of them is on my left hand, which is called Sales Leadership. I've stolen lots of stuff out of that. Thank you, Keith. Appreciate that. And you've written a flurry of other books that we can go into a little bit later. You also started many, many moons ago for the International Coaching Federation many moons ago. I know it's changed in various shapes and incarnations since, and you've been featured on Fortune, New York Times, and CBS. Have I missed anything out, Keith?
I don't know. I didn't write that, but it sounded really good. Sounds like we have really high expectations for today.
Yeah, we've got really high expectations. So we want to give value to the world. And I like to think that everything that we do is high performance. That's the way I look at my mind. We've got to practice what we preach. We've got to be congruent with doing what we say we're going to do. There's so many trainers out there and so-called experts out in the world. They don't practice what they preach. They say, do what I say, not what I do. But I know you do what you say because reading your books and doing my research beforehand, I know you practice what you preach. So when you got into this many years ago, what was your thought process behind how you can impact people? What got you into it in the first place?
Before I ventured into coaching, I owned a couple of other businesses. And with my partners, I always seemed to gravitate to the sales management part and the sales part.
Yeah.
And we built those organizations very successfully. And I vividly remember one day, it was April 24th, and I was reading an article, and the title was A New Profession Called Life Coaching. Now, keep in mind, this is over 30 years ago. It's one of the first time people like, coaching, what is this thing? I thought coaching is for sports. And when I went through the article, I was getting more and more excited about reading what a coach does, not from a place of sports. And of course, there were some overlaps, but really speaking from a place of imagine working with someone and helping them create the life and career that they want most, helping them reduce the daily struggles that they're faced with, helping them uncover things that are getting in their way that they don't even realize, and helping them remove the ceiling of potential that they've placed on them. And I'm reading this and I'm getting more and more excited. And from that point, I immediately showed the article to my partners and say, guys, I'm giving you notice. I'm out. This is what I want to do. And from that point on, and making the transition out and building my practice, starting with sales professionals and of course then evolving to sales leaders, I never looked back. And it's interesting how the universe tests you, because over the years I've been offered other positions. I was offered a very interesting position right after 9/11 with the government to actually train internal intelligence on leadership skills. And I'm thinking, what an opportunity. But it also required my family and I moving away from family, and something to even share with people when you're making a decision is make the decision based on your core values.
Yeah.
When you're making a life decision, make it on your core values. Don't make it on what you should feel you're doing or what you feel you have to be doing. If you want to make the best decision for you and the people around you, look at the core values and make sure your core values are aligned with who you are and what you're looking to do.
Yeah.
So again, just to share that with everyone, hopefully that helps.
I was going to say congruence is the word that I love to use, but everything has to be in line with your core values. But let me unpack that a little bit, because I think people don't really understand what their core values actually are. And especially as sales leadership and leaders in total, what are the core things that you would do to really unpack what their values actually are? I know what mine are, because I've been tested many times, being coached many times to unpack what that is. But from your point of view and your experience, what would you normally do to unpack the values and their values, and how would you get them to use them?
Let me first define what a value is through my eyes. A value is who you are when you're fully self-expressed as a human being. When you live your values, you're actually in your integrity. Now, integrity people often define as honesty, but I have a different definition of integrity. Your integrity can be honest, and because that's your core value. But integrity also is what you do that makes you whole and complete. So, for example, if you're not living a core value, and let me give you an example of some of my core values: connection, hopefully today, making an impact, love, adventure, extreme self-care, travel, music, religion, culture. All these things are true passions of mine, that when I am doing those things and learning those things and traveling and taking care of myself and being with the people I love, I know that I'm living the best life I can live. That's honoring your core values. Now, conversely, and this is a great guide for people when, I don't know how else to say it, Jason, but you know how sometimes you just have a day where you just feel off? You can't put your finger on it, but it's like, today's just not my best day. And it's not like something dramatic happened, but there's something off. And I can give you a very specific example for me. Right after 9/11 and during 9/11, travel stopped for me. And I would say prior to 9/11, I was traveling, probably my practice was probably 70%, 80% travel, 20% working remote. And of course that switched during the pandemic. And when this switched and I wasn't traveling to all these incredible countries and meeting these incredible people, I felt off for some reason and I couldn't put my finger on it. And then I realized I'm not honoring my core value of adventure, of travel, of connecting with people globally. Now, of course, that was a conditional thing that was out of my control. But my point is, when you know what your core values are and you feel off, it's an integrity issue. So go back to your core values and see what core values you're honoring and what you're not. Now, Jason, if I can take this now and bring it into the realm of how leaders can leverage this. I always coach and implore leaders that when you are, and this is something I always do with new clients, before I even work with them, I ask for their personal vision
Yep.
I ask for their core values and their goals. Now, most coaches will say, just send me your goals. But what if the person is sending what I call a should-based goal, which is, gee, I think this is something I should do, versus a value-based goal? If you're focused on the wrong goal, you're going to continue to feel resistance on the other side. When you're focused on the right goal, it's going to pull you towards that vision and that end result you're looking to achieve. So with managers, I share with them, listen, here's a great exercise to do with your people. Help them uncover their core values, coach them on what values are, why they're important. And once you're able to see what their vision is and be able to recognize their core values, you can actually leverage that in coaching as a positive way. So when, let's say, for example, I'm a manager and you're one of my salespeople and you come to me and you know, you're sharing a challenge or a frustration, something's going on that you're looking for some coaching on. My first question is going to be, what values aren't you honoring? Geez, Keith, that's a really good question. What value aren't I? You know what? I think I've been focusing too much on me and not enough on the prospect. And my whole point is wanting to give value, not about what I can get. And I think part of this is just the pressure we've all been feeling and having to produce and focusing on the results that, you know what, I think I drifted away from that value. And I'm glad we're having this conversation because it's putting it back in front of my line of vision of what I have to focus on.
So talking about pressure, and I know we've been dealing with values, within lots of larger organizations, and I know you've worked in a lot of them, is coaching under pressure. Because it almost feels like a part of your brain falls out your head. And excuse the terminologies, it's coaching under pressure things. You got so many back-to-back meetings and you forget everything, and a lot of huge amounts of cortisol, which is flooding through our brains. I don't think the coaching is that great when it's like that. So teaching people to coach well under pressure is a skill in itself. And we did talk about values, we did talk about the impact, but I think part of that is the value that you want to give. Well, same as yours and mine, we want to give impact. But I know there's other things that are flying off in people's, the leaders' heads, which don't allow them to be in the present moment. What sort of things could you suggest to help people be more present in what they do and that impact without actually flying off? Oh, I've got another meeting in 3 minutes, or they're thinking about the previous meeting and so on and so forth. I just think it's really important to give value forward.
Yes, there's a lot there. So
there is, yeah.
Please ping me about that being present, because that's going to be quintessential in this conversation. And I ask people, are you working from home or are you living at work? And it takes them a second.
I like that.
I'm like, oh, I get it, Keith. Okay. Am I able to set boundaries and create a quality of life and be able to balance my personal responsibilities with my work responsibilities while maintaining my quality of life? You know, that's one of the biggest challenges that people are faced with today. And when we're pulled in so many different directions, it's hard sometimes to stay focused on the present. And I want to go back to that. Here's the big challenge, though, is if we think about all the things that are pulling at us, all these different tensions, whether it's personal life, career, clients, you know, hitting our numbers, hiring, you know, headcount, all the things that managers and salespeople are, you know, get stressed about. You mentioned about coaching under pressure. Now, to me, I interpret that a couple of different ways. The one way I interpret it is, here's the salesperson, and they're at the end of the finish line. They're ready to cross the finish line, right, to close that deal. And all of a sudden, they hear from procurement. And procurement says, well, listen, we're looking for 2 more discount points. And the salesperson freaks out. And what do? They go to their manager. Mr. and Mrs. Manager, what do I do? The customer, I'm at the end of the sale. They're supposed to sign the contract today. They're asking for 2 more discount points. What am I supposed to? Well, sales 101. If you're running into objections at the end of a conversation or at the end of your sales process, you miss the conversation or questions in the beginning to better qualify and assess if they're a fit or not.
Yeah.
So back to this all bleeds into what manifests this pressure. So now here we are. Here's a fan, and it's about to hit the fan, okay? Yep. So when you're at this situation, the coaching is over. There's no more coaching at that point. It's firefighting. It's putting out the fire. It's the manager jumping in and having to play Superman and save the day. There's no more coaching there. It's reactive. Yeah. Now, in that situation, what I coach managers on is after that, do a post-mortem. Now let's sit down. We've resolved this situation. Let's talk about what we can do to ensure this never happens again. And putting a strategy in place. It's a post-mortem. But if we go deeper into the why, as why this salesperson is in this situation in the first place, it comes down to one thing. ABCs of leadership.
Yep.
Always be coaching.
Yep.
I can tell you right now, it's really easy, Jason, right? When you see a problem that's that big, it's really easy to notice it. Okay. But when you see a problem this big, it's not that hard. It's more difficult. The only way you can eliminate this to grow to this is by consistent coaching, because if the manager was coaching, they'd recognize the problem when it was smaller and they could do something about it rather than come to a place of reaction.
Yeah. Yeah. We spoke about, and rewinding a little bit, and we spoke about presence, and you wanted me to remind you about that because I've written it down, as well as a couple of other things onto that point, and something I wrote recently about being present, but also not thinking about the future, not thinking about the past, but really knowing yourself. I think that's one of the most foundational things that we should have as a person when we are in leadership, to understand you before you can actually help and advise and give change to other people.
I would say, and building off that, it is the single most difficult thing that people tell me they try to do. There's a reason. And in every organization, we're driven by results, right? We have to drive revenue. We have to drive sales. We have to get more logos. We have to acquire and retain more customers. Yeah. All these things that are responsibilities. And again, on top of those, we have more responsibilities. So again, to this quintessential tension of being pulled in a million directions, it is impossible to be present. So I will challenge everyone out there that maybe, and I'm being conservative, maybe 5% of your waking hours, you're actually fully present and engaged in the moment. Yeah. Most of the time, Jason, to your point, if we look at the 3 points of time, past, present, and future, because every organization is result driven. This is a global epidemic. This is an occupational hazard, especially as salespeople when you have a target on your back. So how can you not keep focusing on the future?
Absolutely.
When's my next lead? When's my next meeting? And guess what? The managers reinforce this, because during a deal review, what do you think they're saying? When are you having another meeting? When are you closing this deal? How many calls did you make? These are all result-driven conversations. And the irony of it all is you don't coach the result.
Yep.
You coach the process, because the process is in the present.
Absolutely.
The result is in the future. So what I share is and this is a challenge, unless you're, a Buddhist monk living in a monastery where you have no distractions, this is life and everyone's going through something. And being present is difficult because we're always focused on what's next rather than what's now. And unfortunately, it's often experiences that we have in our life that may not be so positive that bring us back to the moment, just right there. And I shared, before my dad passed 2 years ago, that forces you more than anything to be in the present and recognize what you're grateful for and the blessings you truly have around.
Like, we're both very much in line with that, because again, my dad passed. But I tell you, the fundamental thing that I learned, even visiting, and this is to add on value for anyone that's listening, something that I learned really well over the last few months, 5 months, is to appreciate the moment, enjoy being in the present more than you realize, because uncertainty in the future, we just don't know. We have to create our futures. We can't do anything about the past. The past is gone, but appreciate the moments. But the most impactful thing that we can do now is living here and now, and appreciate whatever drives us forward is the most impactful thing that we can actually do. And that's one of the biggest learnings that I can give to the listeners, and we can both, because we're both congruent on this, my favorite word again, and in line with how we can actually impact. So I think present is our present state right now.
And it's like, remember the days you wished and prayed for the things that you have now.
Yeah.
And now you have them. Are we living in a state of gratitude, or are we saying, okay, I got this, now what's next?
Yep.
What's next is always going to happen. So I share a duality with people. Be mindful of the future. Those are your goals. Of course, we need to focus on our goals while being present in the moment.
Yeah.
So I have a really, really quick story to share that drives us home. Is there was a young man who was wanted to become the most famous martial artist. So he sought out a mentor, a sensei, and he found this master, and he went to this master and said, I want to become the most famous martial artist in the land. How long must I study? And the master said, 10 years. And the young man said, well, what if I practice day and night? And the master said, 20 years. And the young man was getting frustrated, and he replied to the master, well, what if I work harder than all of your other students? And the master responded with 30 years. Well, now the young man lost all of his patience, and he looks at the master and he says, I don't understand something. Every time I tell you I'm going to work harder to achieve my end result, you tell me it's going to take longer. Why? Well, the master smiled and he said, because when you have both eyes on your destination, you have no eyes left to find your way.
Oh, I love that. Oh, I think I might borrow that at some stage, and I will remember that. That's quite thought-provoking as well.
It's something that, and if I could just, to me, this is the most important thing. And even if we tie this again back to leadership and coaching, my definition of coaching, the art and language of creating new possibilities. Okay, well, let's break that down. Art and language, creation, past, present, future. When does creation happen? In the moment. Where do possibilities live? In the moment. Where does your agenda and expectation live? In the future. When you're focused on the future, you're no longer in the present. You know what else you can't be doing? You can't be listening.
Yeah.
You can't be engaged with that person. You can't be connected with them because you're already thinking about what's next rather than being engaged on what's now. Why it's so important for us to detach from the outcome. Yeah. And we allow that to organically happen and generate the results we want.
Completely concur. And I think that powerful listening, and I'm listening in all aspects. I mean, listening with the eyes, looking at the body language, noticing everything, the surroundings, the things behind you. Something that I was taught many years ago, and 25, 30 years ago. And I was out with my manager at that time. and we went into and was learning. I was learning on the ropes, and he said, "Well, when we walk in here," and he's quite an experienced guy. He said, "What I want you to do is walk into the building. I want you to notice everything. Notice plaques on the wall." As we go up the stairs, just notice the curtains, notice the blinds, notice everything. We walked up the stairs. He said, "What I want you to do when we go into the office, I want you to notice the seating arrangements. I want you to notice everything. I also want you to notice their handshakes as you walk in and look into the person's eyes as you shake their hands and greet with a smile. But once you sit down, notice all the surroundings around you. But I want you to take notes and listen intently. Stop thinking about coffee that you had. Stop thinking about your dinner that you're going to have this evening or whatever. All the questions that you might want to ask and, oh, you haven't asked them. It's good to mentally rehearse stuff in advance. But when you're there, you live in the present moment, and exactly actively listening is one of the most powerful tools that I've ever learned and still learning. I have to, it's a muscle. It's like anything. It's a brain. It's a muscle that's in our head.
And it's interesting because there are so many courses and books on listening, but I can break it down in one sentence. If you're not present, you can't listen. It's really that simple.
Yeah.
Being a proactive, intentional listener requires being present and engaged, putting your agenda aside, putting the results you want to drive, and focusing on what they want, what is most important to them. Seeking to understand their point of view is the quintessential foundation of coaching, whether you're coaching internally, your peers, your manager, a manager coaching their team, and even coaching your customers.
Yeah.
This all applies.
So I always like to ask this question along the way because I think it's really cool. So if you were interviewing you, what sort of questions would you ask yourself?
What's the secret of life?
Okay. So what's the secret of life then?
Enjoying the passage of time.
Could you elaborate further?
No. I'm kidding.
All right. Okay.
Well, if we're enjoying the passage of time, another way of saying that is to be fully present and engaged. Unfortunately, and again, not to be morbid, but there have been many times when people in hospices have been interviewed, and the interviewer would ask, if you could change anything in your life, what would it be? And they would say things like, oh, I wish I spent more time with my friends and family. I wish I traveled more. I wish I connected more. I wish I took better care of myself. I wish I spent more time doing the things that bring me joy. No one ever says, I wish I spent another day at the office. No one ever says that.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I want to build on something, Jason, that you said, which is so critical today, especially in our hybrid world, about recognizing not just the conversation, but recognizing the atmosphere of what's around you. What great coaching, by the way, you got from that manager. And today, when we're delivering presentations and having meetings constantly back to back, not only do we lose that focus, but we don't realize that we never had this level of visibility into people's homes that we have now. So to your point, walking in the office, shaking someone's hand, looking to see what prints are on the wall or art. Well, now doesn't that still apply to when we're having a conversation? After all, I could talk to you. Hey, I see you have a bunch of books that back there. I don't see mine.
I found this. I found
this. So we can have a conversation about that. Or one of the things that you had mentioned, Keith. I see your guitar back there.
Yeah.
If we started talking about music, that would take the rest of the day. Point is, that's how you foster personal connections. And if you're a leader and you're having a one-on-one with one of your directs, and there they are, and you're observing them, and they're wearing the same dirty shirt that they've worn for the last week, and dogs and cats and kids are running around, and there's a pile of papers and chaos everywhere, and unfortunately, most people don't have a home office. I'm very fortunate that I do. So this person was in their kitchen. Are you going to tell me as a human being and as a manager, you're not going to address those things? Are you just going to say, okay, glad we had this deal review, talk to you next week? What an opportunity missed to support people, not just around their career, but what managers are doing today more than ever is supporting people around their life.
Yeah.
And no one has trained leaders how to do this. That's why if you're still having the same conversations and you're still selling the way you did pre-pandemic, you're already set up for failure.
Yeah.
And the conversations, if I could just drive this one point home, Jason, that I'm referring to give some context to the leaders out there, are things like, hey, I just want to have a conversation around not work, but I want to make sure that I'm supporting you so that you can thrive at work and still create that healthy balance at life. So are you open to having this conversation? First thing you need to do in any conversation, set positive intent.
Yep.
You must do that. Otherwise, when intentions aren't clear, people default to fear. So here I am, I set positive intent. Now, what is that conversation going to sound like? Well, as a coach, I'm going to lead with questions such as, so walk me through what's working for you now that you're working at home.
Mm-hmm.
What do you miss working in the office? How are you taking care of yourself every day? How do you balance your personal responsibilities with your responsibilities at work? How do you set boundaries with the people that you're living with, your family? Are you turning off work at the end of the day so you can be present and engaged with people around you?
And the good thing about what you've said and suggested, you're observing, but you're also checking in with them to make sure that they're okay. But you're also building rapport and trust and that connection and that famous word, which is psychological safety now, which is good as well. And I think people should practice what they preach again. I know we spoke about that earlier, but it's psychological safety and connection builds that trust, but also builds in that intrinsic motivation within the other person that they want to work with you, not for you.
Yeah, and again, just echoing your point, to me, and we can always use all these different buzzwords like psychological safety, and which probably most people have no idea what that means, by the way. Let's use a word that everyone does know. The new sales and leadership strategy today is care.
Yep.
Care. So focus on taking care of your people, not just the results. One of my favorite quotes by Gandhi, is in order to serve yourself best, lose yourself in the service of others.
Absolutely. How true a word. And there's thousands of Zig Ziglar quotes that always keep flushing through my mind. And his son, Tom, sent me a couple of his buzzword little books. And I always refer back to them because they're always so cool. And impacting others and to serve others is so very good once you set your mind empathetically to the other person and helping them to get what they want.
If we could just make a fundamental shift in business, regardless of the position you're in, sales leader, sales manager, if we could just shift away from not making it about us and seeking to serve others, that will impact every area of your business, from your culture to the results, to your sales, to the retention, because your customers are getting from you what they're not getting from others.
Absolutely. I love that. That's really good. Could you share, as we're coming towards closely to the end of the podcast today, do you have any golden nuggets that you can give forward to the audience that listen right now? I know you've given loads already, but I always like to ask that at the end of the podcast.
I'd like to share 2 nuggets. How's that?
Yeah, good. Awesome.
The first nugget's going to be strategic for all of our leaders out there. And if any leader believes that they don't have time to coach, they don't know what coaching is. Because coaching is not something you do to people. It's not something you say, I'm putting my coaching hat on. It's who you are, it's how you show up, and it's how you communicate. Because in the most simplistic form, coaching and leadership is a mindset and a language. Just like you're learning Spanish or French or Italian or Urdu or any language, okay? Coaching is a language, and it's the language of leadership. So I want to share a 30-second coaching strategy.
Excellent.
So that no one can tell me coaching takes too long. And this is exactly why I created it. So here we go. Manager, let's paint the scenario. You have one of your direct reports coming to you, and they're saying, Mr. and Mrs. Manager, I could really use your help. Here's the situation. What do I do? There is your defining moment, Mr. or Mrs. Manager. Are you going this way and become the quintessential chief problem solver, giving the answers out and giving the answers out to your entire team, making them dependent, and you can't scale dependency, nor are you building a future bench of leaders, or are you leading with questions? And if you have time to give an answer, you have time to ask a question. So here's the $1 million question. Mr. or Mrs. Salesperson, I appreciate you coming to me, and of course, I'm happy to share my opinion with you. However, you're a lot closer to this than I am, and I trust you and I trust your judgment. So what's your opinion on how to resolve this or handle this or move forward or achieve the results? Now, I'm from New York. I have a tendency to talk fast, and I slow down. And I used to call it the 60-second strategy. Now it's the 30-second strategy. One question. Think about what we've done. Hey, I will give you my opinion. I'll share my opinion. Great, because that's what they want. However, you're a lot closer to them, acknowledging their role in the scenario. And I trust you and I trust your judgment. What do you think that's going to do? It's going to build their confidence and trust in your relationship. So what's your opinion on how to move forward? Mm-hmm. The word opinion is critical. I did not ask what's your solution, what's your strategy, what's your answer, because they can be right or wrong. An opinion is never right or wrong. It's just an opinion. So when you ask someone for their opinion, they can't say, I don't know. You don't know your opinion. So you'll always get an answer. So there's my strategy for every leader and salesperson to start using today. To wrap it up with a final thought, Jason, and given the conversation we've had, and really, if we were to put an umbrella around this, we've really focused a lot on culture and mindset and skill set, and also the importance of being present and really uncovering what your core values are. So in that same breath, people create the mindset. Mindset shapes behavior. Yep. Behavior defines culture, and culture determines success. That's why the primary objective for salespeople, for managers, for every organization is to make your people more valuable every day. So the question managers ask and salespeople ask when they wake up in the morning is, what do I need to do to hit my business objectives today? That's the wrong question, and it puts you in the wrong mindset.
Yeah, it does.
The right question, what do I need to do to make my people more valuable today than they were yesterday?
Awesome stuff. Love it. So always a little plug for you at the end. How can people find more about you?
Well, I would suggest everyone, first of all, go to my website, keithrosen.com. Just relaunched it. Tons of free courses. I have new free ebooks. I have my new ebook, The 7 Types of Coaching Questions. For any leader that's struggling with what questions to ask in what scenario, I've given you a cheat sheet for it. So go on my website, make sure you download that for free. And of course, I'm always putting out new content. Let's make sure we're connected on LinkedIn and Twitter. And of course, if you have any questions, to me, the best coaches take people to where they've been. You know, it's hard to take someone where you haven't been before. just to wrap up this point, I just want to share, first of all, Jason, thank you very much. I appreciate it. Again, sharing everyone, hopefully we can connect. And again, download my new book. I also am launching a new book, so make sure you sign up for my newsletter so you can get updates on that. And Jason, I turn it back to you. Truly want to thank you for the opportunity to work with you and deliver value to your audience. And hopefully we did what your core value and my core value is, which is to make an impact.
Thank you so much. I always appreciate people like yourself giving a really good balanced point of view. So as I said in the start, I want to create that ripple effect forward and help people to learn, grow, and impact on what they do, and exactly what we've done today. So I thank you again for that.
Oh, my pleasure. Absolutely. Thank you, Jason.